Hello and welcome to the TSG Multimedia Podcast for May of 2018. This podcast is sponsored in part by Podomatic and John's Easy Weight Calculator app. You can find this app on the Apple Store, and it's one of the quickest and easiest ways to calculate the NMRA recommended weight for HO and N-scale rolling stock. As usual, it seems like I have a lot to talk about, so let's jump right in here. On May 20th, the first ever scheduled live webcast will take place with a live drawing for winners of the survey that's been online at the website at www.tsgmultimedia.com. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I want to bring you up to date on all the stuff I did this past month since the last podcast. There's quite a bit, so bear with me here. On the weekend of April 7th and 8th, there was an open house at the South Bay Historical Railroad Society. I was there on Sunday to volunteer, and I also took a bunch of photos and some video that my iPhone was kind enough to make a video montage out of. The SBHRS open house is more than just a chance to see their layouts. Open house means just about everything is open. Every room in the depot has something to see. There's what they call the company store, where a lot of train-related things are sold, mostly models and model-related stuff, but there's always a lot of books in the company store as well. The sales of these items help the organization pay for the maintenance of the historic buildings and museum. They also open up some of the historic buildings they maintain and preserve on site, including the interlocking tower, as well as the vintage coach that's under restoration on the parallel track in front of the building. This is one of the best railroad-related events in the South Bay, and they do it twice a year, usually in April and again in November. On the weekend of April 14th and 15th, I went out to Folsom with my fabulous secretary to check out the Placerville and Sacramento Valley Railroad. This operation is really cool. It operates on a former Southern Pacific branch line, and like all these lines, it's packed with history and some really neat scenery. I was talking with a friend who made the point that these railroad lines in many ways are kind of like time capsules or time machines, because the places they can take you are so far removed from the inevitable development that chokes out the open spaces around population centers, that the landscapes haven't changed really in hundreds of years. And what you see now is what people saw, for example, in the 1800s. Think about that for a minute. If you think about that, you'll understand very clearly one of the key reasons why I do what I do, advocating for the preservation of this history and these places. While we were there, we met up with our friend Hunter Lose for a train ride and some gourmet dining. I'll show you the gourmet dining at the end of the podcast. I was a guest on Ken Patterson's What's Neat This Week podcast on April 21st. The edited video came out a couple days later. It was really a lot of fun. Also a little strange because I'm usually the host of shows like this. It's nice to be the guest though sometimes because it's a lot less work. Just ask Ken, he knows. He had to edit that program and it takes a long time. Coincidentally, I streamed a live webcast in preparation for that show on the same afternoon that I went on. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I'm really looking forward to doing more live webcasts like that. The interactive nature of it is really addictive, so much so that I actually did another one later that same week. That one was kind of a combination of updating a couple product reviews, answering viewer questions, and going on some rants about things like Star Wars and Heritage Unit paint schemes. It was a lot of fun getting to hang out with the viewers who showed up. So I'm looking forward to the scheduled live webcasts where more people will show up. This past weekend, we went out to Sonora to attend the Sierra Historical Seminar at the invitation of my friend John Zock. Thanks, John. I got to see Mike Ninneman and Hunter Lose there, and I met a whole bunch of people that I know through friends, but had never actually met before. This seminar is actually a 3-day event, but I was only able to attend on Sunday this time. Friday and Saturday were for touring historical sites and model layouts. Sunday was presentation day, so I got to see presentations by Larry Jensen, author of several books about trains and movies, Thomas Bullock II, grandson to the Thomas Bullock who built the railroad. Patrick Carnahan showed some very rare vintage photos that his father took during the 1950s. Hunter Lose shared 8mm and 16mm vintage films of the railroad from the 1960s. Kyle Watt talked about the locomotives of the Sierra. Lisa DeLacy talked about considerations involved with the restoration process of historical equipment. And finally, Ray Davis talked about upgrading older brass locomotives. John Zock, Dave Connery, and Glenn Sutherland did an excellent job organizing this event. I'm really glad I got to go. It was a cool experience overall, and another reminder about how much history can be found just about anywhere you look. I'm really going to enjoy making the History of the Sierra Railroad documentary I've mentioned before, even more now. I mentioned the bell icon on YouTube last month, and what I'm talking about is look below the bottom right corner of this video. Next to the subscribe button, you should see a little bell icon down there. And if you click that bell icon, you'll be notified anytime a new video is released on the channel, or if I start a live stream unannounced. It's great if you don't want to miss anything, and it may be worthwhile too since I seem to be popping on with live webcasts a little more often now. It's really funny to me because YouTube already has the whole subscribe thing. The bell is for subscribers who really want to subscribe, I guess. For real, apparently. Don't worry though, I'm not going to ask you to hit the bell for channel 2, at least not yet. I only want regular subscribers there so that I'll qualify for the advanced services and monetization that YouTube took away earlier this year. Speaking of that, channel 2 is right around 800 subscribers now, so there's less than 200 more to get to 1,000. Thanks so much for helping me with this. Today on channel 2, by the way, I released my first ever episode of something a little more serious called Bay Area Day Trips. It's especially good if you live in the Bay Area or if you're planning to visit and just want to know what kind of stuff there is to do around here. I hope you'll take a moment and check it out and let me know what you think about it. Hey, maybe you'll even like it and decide to subscribe to that channel. Hint, hint. You never know, right? It's something I've wanted to do for a long time too, so I'm pretty proud of it. Let's look at the viewer poll results from last month. The question was, do you prefer a club layout or a private layout? Club layout got 24%, private layout got 60%, and other got 15%. Not terribly surprising. I would have been surprised if club got more than private, but I think everyone likes a private because you can do what you want. So anyway, here I am again doing another podcast. I thought I wasn't going to be as busy in April, but it ended up being busier than March. And now I'm facing May with a calendar that's already full. So that means I get to take it easy in June, right? Yeah, sure. Anyway, speaking of my upcoming activities, here's one I know a lot of viewers will like. I'm going out chasing trains next week with a couple of friends, and I intend to make a Chasing Trains episode from the day's events. You'll know some of the guest celebrities there already, but there's also a very good chance that you'll see some new guest celebrities as well. I've been wanting to do this for a while because I like chasing trains, and I know a lot of viewers enjoy the series too. So expect to see a trailer for that in an upcoming podcast, and then the full episode will publish shortly thereafter. And yeah, should be good though. I've been looking forward to doing this for a while, but the weather wasn't so great. Also this month, I'll be filming steam operations in Jamestown for the History of the Sierra Railroad documentary that I was talking about. Haven't been out to Railtown 1897 since last year, so I'm really looking forward to it. Last time I went, it was all dried up with very little green foliage. This time, it's still spring, so it's going to be pretty lush out there. And I really love the foothills of the Sierra, especially in the spring. There's really nothing like it. I grew up east of Lodi, just where the hills start to roll, so visiting the places on the east side of the San Joaquin Valley always feels a lot like going home to me. So I really like it up there a lot. I'm going to check out the RDC Southern Pacific number 10 later this month in Woodland, California. That's near Sacramento, at the Southern Pacific Railroad History Center. I hope to see what they're doing with it and how it's coming along. And in case you're not aware, RDC number 10 was moved to Woodland last year so that it can undergo some restoration. And my understanding is that they're not going to restore it to operation, but rather to a static display as a centerpiece for the SBHRS. And I haven't seen this equipment in person, so I'm really looking forward to checking it out. And of course, I plan to make a video about that, as I always do, for an upcoming program here on the channel. And if you want to check out the organization's website to see what I'm talking about, they're at www.splives.org. And finally, I have a production day scheduled with Jack Burgess in early June to work on the video documenting the op session that I filmed at his YV layout back in March. And while we're at it, we're also going to record the next episode of Model Railroading with Jack Burgess. And speaking of that, I just have to say, wow, the first episode of Model Railroading with Jack Burgess came out last Saturday, and it seems to be a smash hit. It's been watched more than any other recent release in the first few days of publication. So anyway, Jack's a really busy guy, but I'm going to see if we can maybe alternate between Model Railroading 101 and Model Railroading with Jack Burgess every other month. In case you can't tell, Jack loves modeling and he loves sharing his insights and experience. And we have a lot of fun and laughs during our production sessions. I wish I could record all of it and put it on here, but I can't. I feel really privileged to be able to bring all this to you. And I mean that. It's one thing to read an article, and then again, something totally different to see someone, in person right there in front of you talking about something that they like so much. And I'm so glad I get to be the one doing it. I have learned a lot just making the videos, and there's more to come. So I'm not sure Jack has time to watch the podcast, but if you're watching, Jack, thanks a lot for letting me be the one to bring this stuff to people. So I have some upcoming events to talk about. The Tri-City Society of Model Engineers has their open house at historic downtown Niles, California on June 9th and 10th. And I realize I'm a little early with this one, but I found out about it and I don't want to forget to tell you. That way you can make plans to go. On Saturday, they're open from 10 to 5, and on Sunday, they're open from 10 to 4. And you can get information about that organization at www.nilesdepot.org. Silicon Valley Lines is having their open house on that same Saturday, June 9th. Their open house is from 12 to 4, and they're at 148 East Virginia Street in downtown San Jose. Their website is www.siliconvalleylines.com. A quick note here. Have you noticed that I focus a lot on my local organizations on this podcast? That's because these are the places I'm familiar with, subscribe to, and often I have friends who belong to them, so naturally they keep me well informed about what they're doing. I mentioned this because a viewer once suggested that I should cover everywhere. And I've always invited people from wherever they are to send in their events so that I can mention them here on the podcast, and it hasn't really happened. It might be a good thing though, because if I had 300 events to mention in every podcast, it would be pretty hard to do, or I'd have to omit a bunch and then, upset some people or whatever, just to keep the podcast at a watchable length. So if you've ever wondered why I only talk about stuff in the Bay Area, that's the answer. I don't hear a lot about events from other people elsewhere. And honestly, I don't have time to compile a list, a full list of every event across the country on my own. So with all that being said, I'm still willing to plug your event if you send it in to me, regardless of where it is. And you can send it to me by emailing it to podcast@tsgmultimedia.com. I'd like to talk now about some of the upcoming YouTube programs coming to the channel in May. On May 12th, that's next weekend, we have our layout tour. This month, it's a vintage Markland layout. This is one of the most interesting layouts I've ever seen. When it's not in use, it folds up in the form of a wooden box for storage. You heard me right. Add this to the fact that it was handmade in Germany in the 1950s, and I think you can understand it's something you're not going to want to miss. I mean, this is one of those things that you just don't see this kind of thing every day. On May 19th, we have John's Models. This month, I'm going to perform a DCC and sound installation on an N-scale SD24 by Atlas. I told you last month I was determined to get this video published, but I kept having to postpone it. Well, not this month, right? Part 1 comes out this month. It doesn't go off without a hitch, though. That's why it's in 2 parts. It's a bit of a challenge for me because I have to modify the frame in order to place the speaker in the model, and I've never done this before. Keep in mind also that N-scale is harder to work on than HO scale because of the size. I don't want to reveal any more spoilers here, but I will say that my purpose in producing these episodes of John's Models is to demonstrate that if I can do this stuff with my limited experience, you can too. And more importantly, you don't have to be an expert to try new things. You just have to have fun and enjoy the hobby. Oh, here's a special one. I mentioned at the start, on May 20th, it's Sunday, at 10 a.m. Pacific time, it's the first ever planned, scheduled live webcast. I'm also going to draw the names from my conductor's hat to see who wins the videos from the online survey that's on my website, tsgmultimedia.com. It's there for about another week, so feel free to respond to the survey so that your name can also be entered into the drawing. On May 26th, it's the return of Model Railroading 101. This episode explains the reasons behind running weighted cars and offers some ideas about how to add weight to the different types of cars, as well as some tips on calculating the correct weights. Now, if I were you, I'd be thinking to myself, oh, he's going to plug that stupid easy weight calculator app of his again. And you're correct about it being mentioned, but, and this is the part you're going to find hard to believe, but it really is true, I'm going to show you a way in this program to calculate the appropriate weight for your rolling stock that's even better, quicker, and easier than my easy weight calculator. I'm not kidding. You'll have to wait and see what that is, but let me just say this. It's worth seeing if you don't already know it. It really is that good. All right, so it's time for this month's poll. And the poll question is, do you like model railroading better or prototype rail fanning? So the options are, obviously, model railroading, prototype rail fanning, I like both equally, or, you know the other answer, other. So, don't forget the viewer survey closes on May 15th. That survey is on www.tsgmultimedia.com, and the live webcast where I'm going to draw the names from the hat to see who wins the DVDs happens on May 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. You can ring the bell like I talked about earlier if you want to be notified of live streams like that. That about covers everything I wanted to talk about this month. I know it was a lot, and I really appreciate you watching through to the end. So thanks again for sticking with me here and helping out with Channel 2. I know I keep talking about it all the time, but it's important to me. So let's onward and upward like usual, and I'll talk to you next time.
So, I said to myself no in and out till April 30th, but because the lovely Abaticolas are here.
It's a special occasion.
Yeah, because the lovely Abaticolas are here, I decided to make an exception because they wanted it. And so we're looking at the new Hunter Los permanent in and out order. The original order before was a #1 animal style, but we've changed it up. We now have a protein style double with grilled onions, fries light, so there's not as much grease, and milk. So this is the new Hunter Los in and out order.
And this is the first time ever, right?
This is the first time ever that I've had a protein style
Give
burger.
it a shot. Let's see if it's any good. And so, how is it? Is it good?
You gotta have lettuce biting skills.
That food.
There you go.
Did you get a good bite of the meat with it?
Yep.
It's solid. It's messy, but it's actually, it does taste good. You know, it tastes like In-N-Out, and I've missed it. It's been about almost 2 months, so I've missed this.
Hunter fell off the wagon for us.
We feel special.